Welcome back to Cash and Sass, the podcast where we ditch the shame, we talk real numbers, and build bold, bankable wealth without sacrificing who we are. I'm your host, Lisa Marie, fractional CFO, wealth mentor, and the sassy wealth queen behind Transcendent Wealth Co. And if you're ready to scale with strategy, own your own power, and finally feel wealthy in every sense of the word, then you're in the right place. So now listen, if you've ever felt gross selling, hello, hands up. Avoid launching because you didn't want to bother people or questioned whether you're even good at sales. Then today's episode is about to set you free. I am joined by, and Justine, I am so sorry I did not make sure I knew how to pronounce your last name. I don't want to do it any bad damage, so I'm going to let you say it. I'm just going to say Justine.
Okay.
So I am joined by Justine, who is a powerhouse sales strategist who has helped entrepreneurs generate millions without cold calling, pressure, manipulation, or burnout. We're talking about selling with integrity, who doesn't want to do that, plugging profit leaks through aligned messaging, charging your worth, and making sales feel good, both energetically and financially. So as I say, let's get into it. First and foremost, please tell me what your last name, how to pronounce it, because I was going to do it so much damage.
It's Beauregard.
Beauregard. Okay, so I wouldn't have done it too much damage. Yay. Okay. I thought I would have, so I did not want to go there. Y'all,
Okay.
that's the biggest thing. The worst thing in the world is to say someone's last name really wrong and like butcher it. So we're just going to dive in, okay? Justine, you've built a career on ditching sleazy sell tactics. And I'm curious, and I think it's really important, what made you walk away from that traditional model?
Well, this is actually a big part of my story and how I turned selling into a career, because when I was in college, I was broke as a joke and I really needed money, and I already had 4 jobs, and I was asking around, why not get a 5th job, because I have no time already and I'm already so in debt. So I asked around and everybody said, get a sales job that's commission based so you have uncapped earning potential. And if you're good, you can make a lot of money quickly. So I got this job in the fundraising department of an educational nonprofit, and it was horrible. Basically, I just read off a script. I was plugged into a really old headset in a computer in a dingy basement, and it would just call hundreds of people an hour, and I would get a lot of voicemails, and I would get a lot of people hanging up on me, and they could just sense that I was selling something from a mile away with the script. And one day my supervisor left me in charge, which was wild that I was the most responsible one at 20 years old. And she just said, keep an eye on everybody. I have to go to a meeting. I'll be back in an hour. And I was so exhausted from working all my other jobs and taking all my classes and double majoring and all the other things I had going on. I was like, you know what? I'm the next person I call. I'm just going to have a conversation with them. And I called this guy who had graduated many, many years ago from the school. And we had this lovely conversation. And at the very end of it, I said, and part of the reason I'm calling today is because we're looking for donations. And I was wondering, you've never given to the school before. I was wondering if you'd consider giving $25. And he paused for a moment and said, no. And my heart just sank. I'm like, nothing is going to work to get me any sort of commission in this job. And then he said, I'm going to give you 50. And that was the moment. It was like that one of those movie moments, like a light bulb went off. And I was like, oh my gosh, if you spend the same amount of time that you would have read off of this script to just hear somebody and spend time with them and get to know them. I mean, this was not a long conversation, but it was meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt so validated in the fact that we can be ourselves. We can be humans. We can connect, and we can get people excited about the thing that we have to sell. We can get them to share our beliefs in it. And from then on, it just snowballed into, I'm just always going to do this, because why would I choose something that's less effective just because it's what I'm supposed to do when I have something that feels better and is way more effective?
Yeah, and it goes back to y'all who listens, how many times I've said, that it's important to do things that are aligned with your values, right? So one of the first things that popped into my head, Justine, was that you were listening to noise. We've talked about this on the other podcast I was doing, on the live podcast I was doing. You were listening to noise and how it was supposed to be done, right? And then you became centered into yourself and you're like, you know what? This isn't aligned with who I am, with what I believe and how I want to do things. So, how about I'm just not going to do it? Let's try it a different way, right? I tell people all the time, if the way you've been doing it or the way people have been telling you to do it is not working, then maybe it's changing it is what, especially if your voice in your head and your gut is telling you that this is just not how you want to be doing it. And so from that, you and I have in common is we've been broker than broke. And y'all, yes, it's actually possible to be broker than broke. It's a phrase that people use, and it's honestly, it's a lot of times when it's just you're on the bottom of the bottom and you're just not quite sure when you're going to start going up. Your money journey, the title of it is just, it's powerful. How has that belief shaped the way you sell?
I think, well, what's really interesting about what you said before, a point that I want to make, because I think this happens to a lot of people, it certainly happened to me, is when we want to do things that are aligned with our values, sometimes our values are not aligned, right? Sometimes there's contention between, like, I have this very deep desire to have a strong work ethic and follow the rules. Like, I was conditioned from a very young age to do that. And so part of me was like, do what you're told, follow the directions. It's working for other people. Eventually it'll work for you. You've just got to show up in that way. Like, you have
Right.
this struggle because the other part of you is like, what I'm saying here doesn't really feel like me, but what's more important? How do you weigh the differences between wanting to do what's right on paper and wanting to do what you know is right in your soul? And
Right.
those are it makes it very difficult to kind of figure out which one gets to win that argument.
Yes. Yes. Very true. And sometimes what we believe is aligned isn't really aligned, is from where we were conditioned,
Right.
even if it was subconsciously. The way we find what's aligned is we actually have to sit down and be, gonna say it, honest with ourselves. We have to list the things out and we have to be very honest with ourselves on what our goals and our values are. What are your values? Not what your parents' values are, not what society's values say, what they say your values should be, not what your boss's value, what their values are. Not what are yours?
Mm.
And you have to turn in and say, okay, what is it that I believe? Right? And if you ask yourself honestly that, you're going to get the answers. And then it's going to become very clear to you looking at what you're doing, whether that's being an entrepreneur or whatever it is you're doing. If that's aligned, you're going to be able to. And if your values have changed or oh, these are my values. Okay. Then this is why I've been feeling like I'm being in a tug of war to go and do something. And I think that's really important.
I think it's also important to recognize, like what got me to that point of like, I'm not willing to do this anymore was also the fact that I had to check in with what's not working. Like,
Hmm.
not just, I have a job. Okay, I'm getting paid very minimum wage and it's not quite covering what I need it to be covering. So
Right.
at that point, my thought was like, if I don't find something for this to work, then it's just not going to be my permanent solution or it's not going to be a viable way to go. And so sometimes we do need to, it's sort of like the old adage, like, you need to hit rock bottom to really, like, you have nothing to lose and then everything to gain, and it shifts your mindset. It's sort of like that, where if you're not challenged enough, you won't proactively break from the norm
Right.
or break
Right.
from the
Right.
status quo because there's not enough friction there to make it happen. And so just recognizing and asking that question and checking in every now and again, like, is this truly getting me to my goals? Because sometimes when it comes to selling, we could be selling on paper very well, but like we're looking at our revenue numbers and going, I'm not where I want to be financially. And that's when you have to check it. You don't have to wait until your rock bottom moment to do a periodic check in with yourself and be like, is what I'm doing getting me to my goals? Because if it's not, it's worth looking into alternatives to get me to my goals before I get to the point where I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. And now it's not about wanting to make more money. Now it's about having to make more money because I'm not able to keep the lifestyle that I have or afford the things that I want. And you asked that question about how my money story has kind of shaped my journey in sales. And I think I am a very privileged person. And so I don't pretend to, there's a lot of things in my life that have been hard. And also at the same time, it was harder for other people around me. Like I had really good people. My mother is the most generous, caring, amazing human. And when we were young, she didn't eat. So I never had to know what it was like to go hungry. Like that's the kind of privilege I'm talking about, where we weren't flush with cash. We barely made it by. But I never felt the true weight of that because I had people who were willing to take that on so I didn't have to feel it. And so when I think about my story and even like in college being broke, it's like I was broke, but also I still had a roof over my head. I wasn't
Mhm.
homeless. I didn't go through, there were so many things that I knew other people's circumstances were always worse than, I had always known of a circumstance worse than mine. And so even though like certain things were hard for me, I'm very careful about how I talk about things because of the circles I run in, the people that I know, and the stories that I've heard. And even hearing you talk about being broker than broke. And I'm like, I'm quite certain that I was like, that I could feel really blessed and fortunate and grateful in my circumstance over that, even though I was over $120,000 in debt and I had bills piling up and I had stress about money constantly.
Absolutely.
It was
Yeah.
still not as bad, right? And so I just try to be really, when it comes to my sales goals and like my business and how I think about money, it was always seeing, as much as I love and respect my mother deeply, one trait that she has that I never wanted to have was codependency, because money can create a lot of that. When you don't have a lot of it, you have to rely on people to help to get you where you want to go. And I
Mhm.
always wanted to be the person who could get myself there. And
Right.
anybody that was in my world was there because I chose that to happen, not because
Right.
I had to have that. And so a lot of my
Yeah.
decisions have been created through a desire to have really radical freedom and independence at a level where, like, anybody who is around me doesn't just know that I rely on myself and I enjoy the company of others, but like I'm extending that skill to my children, and other people around me are noticing that, and I'm able to kind of let that extrapolate beyond me, because I think it's such an important thing to be self-reliant, even though we are social animals and we do thrive in community and we need each other to really be fulfilled beings. I think it's
Mhm.
really important that it starts with us and that at our core, we're okay. And then we get to, right? Instead of we have to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that's really important too. I mean, because, you know, most of us who are entrepreneurs, at least I know me, when it was talking about saying you need to go sell, I was like, "Ew." But we're all in some way a salesperson because like you said, having a conversation with someone and being able to and I find having a genuine conversation works wonders. And so you mentioned detachment. And so I'm curious because I think that I've heard this before. What does detachment look like in sales and why does it work?
Well, I think it's really important to, how I describe selling is advocacy. And when I think about I'm going into a conversation. My assumption is anyone who's talking to me about my business or my offers, they want what I sell. You're not going to get on my calendar if you don't have a sales problem. You're not going to want to reach out to me or ask me a question if you don't need some skill or piece of insight or something that I've got, right?
Right.
But I'm also not attached to you being my person, right? And so
Right.
coming into the conversation and just being like, what do you need? I'm here to advocate for you. If I recognize your sales problem is a sales problem I solve all the time, and I recognize that you're looking for resources that I've already created, or I recognize that you have a skills gap that I've learned how to fill and I can teach you in 10 minutes, there's no way I'm not making you an offer. Because
Right.
to me, the shortcut is the solution. And you could go work with somebody else, but my assumption is also I'm the best at what I do. I've been doing it for 20 years. I'm exceptional at it. People love my style of selling. It's very transferable. It makes complex things simple. And so to me, it's like selling is always a win-win. I'm winning because I get an incredible client and I get to see the impact of my work ripple through the entire life of that person and their circle and the circles around them. And they win because they get to make a hell of a lot more money with me than without me. And they get to feel really good about how they do it. And so when I think about going into situations, I think we can get very wrapped up in this thought that it has to be me. And my thought is it has to happen for them.
It
And
doesn't matter if it's with you or not.
it doesn't matter if it's with me, but 9 times out of 10, if they're attracted to my messaging and they're wanting what I sell, it's me.
Right. I like that because it's like a mentor said, detached attachment. So it's having detached attachment, meaning you're going to make the offer. You know you're the best. We all assume we're the best of the best. I mean, I'm going to tell you now, I know I'm the best. I assume I'm the best, right? Because I'm good at what I do. I've been doing it for 20 plus years. I've had my business going in, I'm in my 10th year. I'm really good at what I do. And yes, there are many fractional CFOs and wealth mentors. And I also know that there's not one that does it quite like I do it. And that's because they're not me,
Yeah.
right? There may be some that'll do it slightly, may have a little bit of holistic in it, or maybe have this, but they're not going to do it with my wealth codes and my 3 profit leaks because I created them because they're not me. So I love that because, and y'all, I've had to learn it and I still practice it. It's that detached attachment, like, not being attached to the outcome. If I can tell that what you need is what I offer, I'm going to make an offer, right? And being detached from the outcome from that is really important. I mean, it's one of the things that we've learned. We've learned that being attached and being forceful and pushy does not work. What it does is push people away. And what does this have to do with money? Everything. Because how you sell, how you feel when you sell is going to determine how you're going to feel about your money, how you're going to feel about your business, how you feel about making, how you feel about going after clients and having clients. Like, so everything. Now, you said that you made 10K and off a single piece of messaging.
Oh, yeah. More than
Okay.
one. Many times.
Walk us through that. What does that look like? I need my listeners to hear this because it's possible and your messaging obviously works. You have clients who do, so there's something you're doing and you don't have to tell the be all, but can you walk us through what something like that looks like?
Well, and I will tell you that it's actually, this is one of those things where I make the complex really simple. This is a really simple concept. Your positioning is critical. You need to be memorable. You need to stand out. You were just describing how you work and why you're the best at what you do. Frankly, I think most people who believe they're the best at what they do really are because not of the 20 years of experience and not because of the proprietary, IP and like all of the things we create and all of the experience we have, but because we love it. We're
Mm-hmm.
obsessed with it. Like
I
I
am.
am
I am.
I am so
I am truly
obsessed,
obsessed.
right? I am so obsessed with sales. The reason why I'm the best at sales is because I eat, sleep, and breathe sales. I wake up
Mm-hmm.
thinking about it. I drive by a billboard and envision how it could be tighter and stronger and better and how the imagery could work more effectively. I listen to podcasts, I read books, I surround myself with people who are making millions of dollars all the time and have conversations about money with friends and family when everyone else calls it taboo because I'm curious and I am constantly looking for opportunities to surround myself with conversations about sales. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I think about what is the biggest difference between messaging that falls flat and messaging that makes 10K, it's the kind of messaging that is what we call sticky, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's memorable. Someone is going to scroll through a bunch of posts about sales coaches, sales experts from salespeople, and they might go, wow, that was interesting. Wow, that was helpful. But how many times, like 9 times out of 10, when I post something, the reaction isn't just that was helpful, that was valuable. It was that was different. I've never heard it said that way before. That changed how I thought about that. That broke a belief I had. That's
Mm.
the type of messaging that activates people, that gets people to question their own thought patterns. And they go, whoa, I feel like you just filled in a missing piece that I didn't even know I had. And now I want to know more. And so there's lots of examples of this. Like I have a client who I got him on a cold call. And I know you said at the very beginning, like, we don't have to cold call. I love a cold call. Like I was brought up with old school selling and the cold calling. And I'm not fearful of calling people when I really believe in something. I'm like, I'll call whoever you want. Like that's a really fun thing for me. This
Mm-hmm.
client is someone I got on a cold call. And he was talking to me about his offer. And I was like, this is the most exceptional, different offer. I've never heard of something like this before. I can think of 10 companies that could use it right off the bat. And I said, have you ever reached out to this person? And we had a conversation and he had somebody in his pipeline that he's like, I've been trying to close this deal for a really long time. And I was like, let me do it. And he was like, okay. And this is when I first started my business 11 years ago. And I was like, I'm going to call for you. I want commission because that's going to motivate me. He was like, okay, whatever. Like, I've been trying to close them. I'm not going to make this money on my own. So I get on this call. And within 2 hours, we closed a $70,000 deal. So you're talking about 10K. I'm talking about 70K. And I've helped people close 300K, a million plus in a single call because of the stickiness factor. It's you have something that they can't get anywhere else that is such a radically different and clear solution to
Mm.
their problem. They're going to buy in a heartbeat. And a couple things need to happen. You were talking a little bit about, and I know a lot of money is about energetics and how we show
Mm-hmm.
up.
Mm-hmm.
And my belief going into that call was like, of course they need it.
Right.
This doesn't make sense. They're burning cash every day they don't have it. It's wild that
Right.
they have not gotten it until this point. Like, these are the thoughts we have. And so going into that, it was just a very easy, I have a specific framework that I teach called the Build Framework for closing sales on the spot, getting paid the same day. And I've been teaching it for years. And going through that framework on the call and spending that quality time, just like I did with my very first sale that I closed that I told you about already, it's very particular connection points. It's really deeply understanding their problem. It's not talking about your expertise, it's leveraging it. There's so
Right.
many subconscious things going on in the sales process and so many things that we're not aware of that happen. This is why so much inconsistency happens in selling because we have success, but we don't realize what we actually did because we didn't create awareness of the skill. We leveraged a skill that we already
Mm.
had, but we don't understand how to use it or how we've used it. So the repetitiveness of that success doesn't come. And we end up going, well, that was really good, but then the next one was really bad. And we don't learn because we're not taught to learn. We're
Right.
taught to just do. And so I think the biggest difference, and if somebody listening is looking for messaging that really stands out and is sticky, look for those moments where you would scroll through the feed and somebody would go, that I've never heard that before. Think about the hills you would die on as a brand. Think about the things you've said to people where they go, tell me more. Those little moments that we overlook or we go, that was a great conversation. We always tend to dig into our failures, but where
Oh,
the
yeah.
real learning is in the successes. When you have those moments and those wins, you have to stop, pause, and go, what was different about that? What did they
Mhm.
lean into? And if you struggle with this and you sell over the phone or like Zoom or something, just say to the person, it's a really simple script. Hey, on a lot of my sales calls, people have epiphanies. They have really interesting moments or breakthroughs. And so I like to record these calls if it's okay with you. So just in case anything comes up, any wording that we come up with or any aha moments that you have, we have a copy of it so I can give it to you after the call. Would that be okay? And usually those people, that does two things. Number one, it builds excitement for the call because they're like, wait, I'm gonna
Right.
have an epiphany. And number two, it allows you to record so you can watch back later at body language and all these little nuances that you, when you're in the call, you're so in it, sometimes you don't recognize it. That can really help you pick up on those little things where people are nodding and smiling and you're going, ooh, that was a good point. I want to repeat that.
Right. Right. So, is this where most entrepreneurs struggle with the clarity in their message because of what you're talking about, that sticky factor, and where they're not leveraging their
I think
their
where most people
expertise?
struggle is that we try to oversimplify our message so that people, we're taught to do the elevator pitch. Like, how do we condense
Mhm.
this down into the shortest version? And sometimes short-winded is not the way. Like, sometimes we can
Right.
actually take out the magic of what we do when we're trying to get it down to just that really simple sentence. Like, I remember talking to somebody about how I used to say, like, I help people close more sales because it's the simplest way to say what I do. And I'm like, anybody could say that, really. Right?
Right.
What am I actually doing? And what I ended up getting into the weeds of was like, what am I really good at? And so then my LinkedIn bio and all the other things became I help entrepreneurs close every sale and get paid the same day. It's a longer version, but it's more specific. Instead of calling myself a sales coach or a sales expert, I'm a sales process and conversion expert because I
Ooh, I like
excel
that.
at thinking about the flow of your process and the way that you close the deal. And that's a very specific skill set versus somebody who's like, I help you with mindset. I help you think about selling differently, or I teach you the basics. I don't do that. I teach you elevated techniques and I raise you to my standard. So automatically those things get solved and more.
Right. And see, I love that. And so I think this is, y'all, this is a really important conversation because you got to realize that sometimes, especially in today's society, people are saying we're in a trust recession. And so I think it's really important that even if you're doing cold calling, that you're building trust, right? And like you said, you're leveraging your message, you're standing out, and which is also building trust. Now, you shared fears around worthiness, losing friends, and not knowing how to handle the bigger money. And I know for a fact a lot of my listeners have been there or there. And I know how I worked through it. And I also love to hear how you worked through it because, again, I know there's more than one way. And I would love for the listeners to be able to hear. But how did you work through those?
I think they all had a very different I'm going to call it a coping strategy, right? And so with money, the worthiness factor growing up and feeling like, who am I to make more money than my mom? To be the only person in my family to have a business that's successful, to, you know, be able to create my own schedule. Like sometimes it's
Mhm.
not even about the money or how much is sitting in my bank account. When other people are saying like, "Oh, I'm struggling to pay bills and I'm flush with cash." There's a lot of like internal work that we need to do to kind of especially when, like I was telling you, I was raised in not a wealthy environment. And so there was a lot of like other people kind of shielded me so that I didn't have to experience the weight of being truly broke.
Mm-hmm.
I almost took that in a different direction, the same thing in a different outfit. I was trying to protect people from my success so that they didn't feel bad about their lack of it. And so a lot of it was like, I get money, I spend money. I spend it all because I don't want to sit on it. I don't want people to know I have it. I don't want anyone to be aware that I've made it or like and so it was like this constant, I am worthy of lots of money. I am worthy of having my skills pay me dividends. I'm worthy of opening up my bank account and seeing a number that I go, "Holy crap, that's cool." Like that was really
And
cool.
I'm worthy of celebrating when I get a new client and more money hits my account and I hear that Stripe ding and yes, all those things. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. And
I
then
love that.
the second thing on your list was really important, the losing friends, because what I decided, and I have had years of my life where I didn't talk to half my family. There were a lot of friendships that went kind of by the wayside. And I think I had to do a lot of work. I was in therapy for many years and I kind of had to process some of the things that were going on. And in a lot of ways, it was just boundaries were crossed that I was not okay with. And I had gotten to a point where I actually built the skill of neutrality, which I think is so difficult. And a lot of people don't ever have it, which is I feel very neutral about a lot of relationships in my life and very fiercely protective of a small few. I have a lot of acquaintances and a lot of people that I'm in touch with and a lot of people that I care about and wish the best for, but only a handful that I would die for. Only a handful that I would show up for at 3 a.m. and do
Right,
whatever they
right.
needed me to do. Right. And so when I think about the loss of friends, it was sort of like a status hit, right? Like we're kind of defined by, oh, you're a good person and you're a cool person if you have a big circle of friends. And for me, that always felt important to be like the likable person and to be the center of the party and all of that. And then at some point, and I think the older we get, we become more aware of this, but it's like at some point, the status doesn't matter when your life isn't what you want it to be. When you
Right.
are surrounded by people who are toxic or unsupportive or not open. And so when I have a couple of friends who've come into my life in the past 10 years or so, and we're very close because we'll have conversations and I'll be like talking about money and politics and religion and sex and like all the things you're not supposed to talk about. And I'm like, if I meet somebody who's willing to go dive in the pool with me and talk about the hard things, because I don't want to just have superficial, how's work? How are your kids? How are you doing? Oh, what recipes are you making? I want to talk about like, how's your sex life these days? Like, what's happening behind closed door? Tell me about your investments. Like, where are you investing your money in? What are you doing here? And I have the most incredible, powerful friendships where we have become wealthy together. We have risen together. We've gotten better sex lives from each other. Like having the conversations and going deep and talking about things that no one else is willing to. Not only do I have
Right.
really fierce relationships and connections to those people, but I also, my life has leveled up. And the people who aren't willing to, I'm just like, I'm neutral about you. And that's okay.
Right.
I'm willing to have dinner. I'm willing to chat. But like, if it comes between that and personal time or that and a massage or that and time with my kids, I'm not going to pick you. And that's okay too.
Yeah. But I mean, I love that because you're recognizing who your people are, right? And you're recognizing, I've said it countless times as you grow, as you do this work to where money is not a taboo subject, you're going, or in any type of work, honestly, but we're talking about money, so we're going to put it there. You're going to have people who are going to fall away, who are no longer going to be aligned, or no longer going to fit into your circle. And that's okay. That's just the way it works. The last thing, and I think this is just truly, truly important because I believe it. You said it's already yours.
Mm.
And I love this. I love this in all the ways because it's just who I am and I do. I love it. What does that mean for entrepreneurs around money and wealth?
You don't have to work so hard for it.
Amen. Can you please say that again?
You do not have to work so hard for it.
Okay, y'all that are listening, pause it, rewind it, and listen to it again. Okay? And honestly, I've had to drill it into me. Okay? You don't have to work yourself. You don't have to work so hard. You don't have to work yourself into a grave to be wealthy. You deserve to have it. And I think that that's just so important. So now my question, how can selling become a wealth building strategy instead of a source of stress? And I know so many people are going to want to know this.
So it kind of ties into that previous question and I'll tell you a quick story. There's a show called Owning Manhattan that's on Netflix, and I am obsessed with this show for one reason or another. Like sometimes I get into this, oh, I need a reality thing to take my mind off of life stuff. And this just happened to be one that I watched recently. And there was a guy, he's a realtor, and he got awarded this new construction that he had to sell every unit in this tower. Downtown Manhattan, really difficult to sell. The builder was not willing to negotiate with any buyers. The price was the price, and that was it. And he, every single day for months, he would ride the subway and go up and down the streets of Manhattan and work with all these buyers, and like nothing was getting sold. There were no negotiations happening on either side. Everybody, like nothing was happening. And he was just very upset when he lost that opportunity. His boss came to him and said, like, listen, we got to take you off this project. You're not closing deals and it's just not going to work. And he's like, I don't understand. I am working my butt off. I am sweating up and down the subway, going back and forth to this building. I don't understand. And I immediately had the thought, this is the wrong fit. Like, if you have to work that hard, there is somebody out there who is so good at selling real estate in that neighborhood. They're going to pick up that building and go bing, bang, boom, the whole building's sold in 6 months. And this guy's working so hard for it. And I thought to myself in that moment, if you're working that hard for it, it's not for you. We need to search for the opportunities that are in flow for us. And that comes to every aspect of what we do, but especially with sales. If you're recognizing that selling feels hard and that there's friction somewhere in the process, there is. Like, it's not, oh, I wonder if. Anything that starts with a, this feels like it might be, or I wonder if, or this isn't, it's like whatever comes after that is true for you, right? And
Right.
when you have those moments where you're like, selling is just like, whether it's, I don't know if I'm cut out for this, you're not yet, right? You get to decide. When you think like, I think I'm just bad at selling, you are, right? But selling is a skill. It's not
It's
something that
something
you
we
just
have to
go,
learn.
God, I'm
Right.
just bad at that. And so I just don't do that. It's,
Right.
I am bad at selling in this way, really good at selling my family on going out to eat, really good at selling my friends on hitting this restaurant on a Tuesday night. But I'm really good at selling myself on buying a new top, but I can't figure out what's going on here. That's just a skills gap. And so if you look for those moments where you have a question or a doubt or something you're butting up against, that's when you don't just make that a statement, turn it into a question, turn it into curiosity. Like, okay, instead of this feels hard, why does this feel hard? Instead of, I don't know, I don't think I can do this. Why don't I think I can do this? Or what do I think I could do? If you're able to kind of skew negatives into positives. And that will give you so much data for what you need to do next to make selling more, I want to say easy, but even that's not the right word for someone who's really struggling. You will get to a point where selling feels easy, where selling does flow, where selling is fun. I've had clients come into my programs and go, I hate selling. I'm bad at it. I'm just never going to get there. And like 3 weeks later, they're glowy and bubbly and they get on the call and they're like, where's my next sales call? I love selling. This is so much fun. And I'm like, see, I'm not making the promise that you're going to love it, but when you find your way of doing it and when you do get in the flow, like there is a way for you to do it. And so if you find yourself in that weird place, turn it into curiosity, look for the skills gaps, and then just work on it until you
Right.
solve the problem.
I love this. Justine, this conversation is everything that my listeners need: practical, aligned, and profitable. And y'all, I hope y'all are listening and you're gathering in all the gold nuggets that you're getting. So before we wrap up, can you tell everyone where they can find you and how they can grab your Stand Out and Sell More mini series so that they can start transforming their sales?
Yeah. So you can find me at sellwithjustine.com. All my handles on social media are sellwithjustine. And my standout series is literally standoutseries.com. And I also have a podcast called Why You Hate Sales. So if you go to whyouhatesales.com or you search for it on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts, you'll find that too. And that really rewrites a lot of the beliefs, a lot of the false advertising about sales, and a lot of the things that you feel are hard, they make them easier. So if you're struggling in that way, you're really going to like that show.
Well, and all of the stuff will be in the notes. And for all of you who are listening, if you're ready to make more money, keep more money, and stop relying on hustle to hit your goals, then it's time for you to book a wealth alignment call. What you and I are going to do is we're going to look at your cash flow, we're going to look at your pricing, your profit leaks, your financial structure, so that you can feel wealthy and supported, not stressed and scrambling. Because I don't know about you, I'm all done with the scrambling. The link again for all of that's going to be in the show notes. And until next time, remember, as I always say, confidence and cash are the ultimate power duo. Go check in with your money, and as always, have a fantastic and wealthy day. Till next time.
Thank you.